child that is struggling with maths, then I think today's recording or video will be very beneficial to you because we're going to talk about, I think, one of the most important aspects of moving from concrete phase of maths to more abstract. And that is knowing the times tables. And I have been teaching maths for many years and tutoring also mainstream students. And I see this when you are the kids that are in the gap of, say, grade 4 to grade 6, even grade 7. Many times the main culprit of why they are struggling is because they don't know their times tables. And either they just guess, and then of course the whole maths problem is wrong, or they spend so much time figuring it out that time goes on. So my guest today is Meagan Flanagan. Welcome here, Meagan. Thank you for joining. And she is from Times Tales. So Meagan, maybe you can just tell us, what is it about? They use something called mnemonics. What is mnemonics and how can this help parents and children?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. This is exciting. Yeah, so I'm from Time Sales, and actually it is a family business. So I do know it pretty well. I was actually the first student they ever used it on when I was 6 years old, and now I am almost 30, and I have been able to teach this in multiple states in the US, which has been awesome, overseas, and now I actually teach it online as well. So I've seen it work for a variety of students. So what is it? Basically, it's a mnemonic-based way to remember the multiplication tables. So mnemonics is basically what we call like a memory anchor or a memory trigger. So it's kind of like when somebody would make up something funny or strange to remember a certain term or something like that. So it'd be like if you were in college and you were trying to remember that a certain number. You would be, for example, you were trying to remember a date. So let's say you're trying to remember 1892. Well, I remember, like, let's say it's the year a college was built or something like that. I would think, okay, well, this college was built and they built it with 1,800 and 92 bricks, something like that. So it'd be something silly to remember that it's the memory trigger. So we make
Mm.
that obviously a lot more simple than that. And all of our characters are actually numbers. And so we teach the multiplication stories in multiplication tables in stories. And so it's really fun and it helps children, especially children with dyslexia and dyscalculia. So we found that students with that, where they're normally getting like numbers mixed around, it works
Mm.
so well because they actually just remember the story in order and then they are able to quickly recall the multiplication table. So then people kind of are like, well, what about students that don't have learning disabilities? And what I found is as I did it in I took it to public school, I've done online tutoring, as I mentioned. The other students find it just really fun because it doesn't really feel like school. So yeah,
Mm.
that's the really cool part about it is with it being a kind of different way to learn, it's not rote memorization where you just have to say it again and again and again. You can actually do
Yeah.
it really quickly, and most students have them completely down in about 2 weeks. So that's been the cool thing.
Yeah, sure. And I think the shape of the number is what lends itself to be the character, right? So that also helps to know which direction a number should go, like your threes and like your sevens,
Mm,
um,
yeah.
because they can remember what that character looked like, because that number's within that character's body, right? Is that how it works?
Yeah. So our characters and yeah, I should have had a picture pulled up here, but our characters work like seven is Mrs. Week because there's 7 days in a week, and the butterfly
Yes.
is a three because and it'll be like it kind of looks like the butterfly. Our chair is the number four, and so the way that the stories work, the one that we always talk about is the nine is a tree house, and so with the story, it'll have two nines, which is representing that nine times nine. And then the story goes there were two tree houses. The first tree house grew 8 apples, and the second tree house grew only one apple. And so they would just learn that story in that order. and make sure they obviously say the 8 apples first and then the 1 apple after that. And then they don't even realize if they memorize that, then they actually already know that 9 times 9 is 81. And so, yeah,
Mm.
that's basically how it works. And so every
Yes.
number of basically from 3 to 9 is assigned a character.
Fantastic. And the question is, because I think, especially with children that struggle, you just need a trick. You just want to give them a tool to get them past this stage. Because many times what I've found is that if they read a maths problem, they know what operation they need to do. They actually know how to solve it, many of them. But it's in the solving, it's in that that foundational working out that becomes the problem. And this is when the times tables could become vital. Whether you're doing, fractions, decimals, percentages, all of that in this intermediate phase, your middle school, is and then obviously with pre-algebra as well, you have to do all the factorizing. So tables are just crucial. It's not something that you learn and then you don't have to do again.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like, okay, you must just learn your times tables, and it's something that is in isolation, but it's absolutely crucial. And then what I've seen is that, unfortunately, because of this middle stage of maths, which is actually vital before you can go into high school maths. And it's that's often when children get the bump in their confidence. And so knowing your times tables is such a confident builder. And it's also takes away so much time to figure out, whether they're counting on their hands or drawing circles, whatever, trying to figure out how to get to that answer if you can know it like that because of the memory trigger, like you said, So but now, what about the math side? So in your program, maybe you can just walk through your program. So if a parent has to buy your program, which is valid for a year, right?
Yeah.
They get access for the year. Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
So what will they see? Is there a student profile, or how does it all work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one last thing I was just going to say on the being foundational is I found too when I was teaching in the classroom and I had 20 something students and I'm trying to help a student quickly. When I ask them what is, 8 times 4 and they're going, I don't know. I, as a teacher, have no tool to be like, okay, well, I have to start at what's 8 times 2? 16. Well, then add 8 more. And it is just, it's so difficult to work with. But if you know the time cell story, you're able to give that student a memory trigger. So then if it's 8 times 4 and they just are like, I don't know, I always go, Mrs. Snowman, the chair, how many buttons, how many mittens? And they're like, okay, 32. And so it's actually so helpful to have that
Mm.
to help your student as well. So as you're going through it, and whether you're a parent or a teacher, you will get to know it pretty well. And so it's very helpful. And then eventually we switch from the stories to the numbers. And so when they see the number, they might be like, oh, I don't know this. And you're like, the 8's the snowman, the 4. And so, yeah. So, anyways, I find
Yes.
that really a amazing part of using times tables because as a teacher, I do find it frustrating. Um,
Yes. Yes.
yeah. So,
Yeah, so maybe you can just walk through what they can expect from the program.
yeah. So we used to have it just basically stories. That was it. And then we moved on to creating it, just kind of adding more. And then we made a workbook, which is really awesome for the reinforcement. And in the workbook, there is like crossword puzzles. They're filling in parts of the stories so that they can get to know them better. And when I tutor, I'll normally I will also assign that as homework just to reinforce it. But recently, what we've done is we've actually made Times Tales into a digital course, which works really well, especially for people that are not in the US, because it can get very expensive to ship things from the
Mm.
US to South Africa or wherever in the world. So the digital course actually has a lot of printable downloads as well. So basically, it does have a student profile. And when you get in, it will basically be in different sections. And so, depending on which one you prefer to get, we actually recently added the 11s and the 12s as well. So, we
Okay.
basically cover all the multiplication stories from 3 to 12. And the cool part is too, one thing, and this is a bit of a side note, is a lot of people are like, well, if they're just learning these stories and these memory triggers, they're not truly understanding the actual concept of multiplication. And so two things I have to say that. First off, I'm like, well, with rote memorization, I don't know that they're doing that either. And then
Mm.
secondly, I'm also, the cool part is with when we start with twos and threes in the program, it actually shows them how multiplication works, that it is grouping. That even though,
Yeah.
2 times 3 is two groups of three, it's the same thing with 8 times 9, 9 times 7, those bigger numbers. It's still nine
Yes.
groups of seven or whatever. But obviously, we don't want to sit there and count every single one. So yeah, so anyways, you'll start basically with the concept of multiplication, and then you move on to the lower numbers, which is, the fours through the sixes and that, and then, well, the fours all the way up to the nines. And then, yeah, so those are broken up, the smaller numbers into the bigger numbers, and then we do 11s and 12s. And throughout the
Okay.
course, basically you are getting a video, and then it goes into a quiz just to kind of reinforce that. And then there's printables for each section. And so, yeah, I kind of feel like it's really, out of all that we've had, the course is the best just because you're getting videos, you're getting quizzes, and you're also getting printable stuff to continue that reinforcement.
Mm. Yes, I really like it because you're bringing that story, which they've seen visually, and then into like a worksheet, and the numbers have still got hints of the character, right?
Yeah,
In
so
the
in the printables, you mean?
yes,
Oh,
in the
that's a really
printables,
good,
yeah.
yeah, that's a really good point. And I also forgot to mention that because they're videos, we actually have animated times tales. And so basically, they're very fun, very engaging for kids to watch. But then we have like a game show quiz. So the children are getting to watch, something fun. It's not just boring. And they really seem to
Yes.
like, especially the video part of it. And then basically the printables, the way that they're set up is they start with the numbers, so basic, or with the characters, and then move to the
Mhm.
numbers. So for example, it would be Mrs. Week times Mr. Week, which is 7 times 7, and then the answer obviously is 49, but they would think, okay, 4 dogs, 9 cats, and write 49. And so
Okay.
that's how it works. So in the first sheet, it's the exact same problems as the second sheet, but the first sheet is all the characters, and then the second
Hmm.
sheet is all of the regular numbers. And
Yes.
then we actually also move on to the concept of division. And we show them how division is actually kind of like a story problem, or like you're a detective because you're finding the missing number. So if you're doing
Mm.
6 times 6 is 36, but you just have 6 and 36, well, just remember what character is now missing. So
Yeah.
that's the cool part there. So the character that would be missing is the other sixth grade class because they played soccer and the score was 3-6. So they know that 36 is the score. What were the two characters there? And so
Yes.
it's basically an extra step for that memory trigger.
Yes, that's brilliant. I'm glad that because actually division and multiplication are the same thing, really. You're just phrasing it differently. Yes, yeah. That's great. And now, so would a parent need to sit with their child throughout the whole session? How long is each lesson of each little story? Let's start there.
It all varies. I would say,
Okay.
depending on the age of the child and the attention span of the child, some children you could leave, and like you can leave and they will do their own thing and the work will get done. Other ones you have to sit by them. So, personally, as a parent, I would probably just sit by even if you're doing something else because the videos and everything will teach them. But it is, yeah, just to make sure for the reinforcement and that you also learn the story so you can help them would
I think
probably
that's
be,
yes.
that's probably the suggested. But if you have an older student that's struggling, like let's say they're 10, 11, 12, you could probably just let them do it as well. So it just
Mm.
depends what the parents want, and they know their child best. So,
Yes, yes. Yeah, and what I've seen, so when you buy the Times Tales package, it's for the whole family that have you got the whole year access, right?
yes. So it's,
And so it's great when you've got younger kids as well, because what I found when I was busy homeschooling my eldest, and we were doing a similar type of um, approach to learning, but it was with phonics. And I actually didn't even have to go through it when my youngest got there, because he knew all the sounds, he knew all the stories and the characters. So when he started with the learning to read, I would just refer to a character, and then immediately that sound was there, and he could go on. I think it's the same type of thing. So if you are sitting, it's brilliant if you've got more than one child as well, that they can also sit in and be part of it. It really cuts out a lot of work if you are homeschooling than having to. And I found that even when you're not teaching the younger siblings, they are learning somehow. When you feel like, it's your first child, it takes like things. Well, you're new at homeschooling, and your child is like your first one, so they're sometimes your guinea pig.
Yes.
So, and you don't really know. You don't always. If like you having to teach them from the get go. Say with the times tables, it's you're busy learning together, and sometimes it feels like things just take longer. And I think it's because you are learning as a mom. But by the time the second or third child comes along, they've already picked up so much from just being in the same room as with when you're teaching your oldest. So it cuts out time. That's what I found with homeschooling, is that the younger ones just pick up a whole lot. And I think that because even if they are younger and they can't necessarily do times tables within an abstract problem, they can certainly know the times tables because they'll be able to know the story. Yeah, so that's fantastic. I love these these quick way to get the younger ones going too.
Well, yeah. On that,
I don't know what you would say.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I recently have been tutoring a student, well, actually twin boys, and I'm doing them both at once, which I'm not actually used to. So that's been fun and they're pretty good. The mom has to sit next to them because they get a little rowdy because they are 8-year-old boys. So
yeah, yes.
Their older sister had done Times Tales, and so they kind of already knew the characters, even if they didn't know it exactly. So it was cracking me up. So I was like, okay, guys, well, next time we're going to do the 11s and 12s. They're like, oh, the pencils and the eggs, the pencils and the eggs. I'm like, yeah, how did you know? And they're like, oh, Sophia did it, last year. So I was like, okay. So it's very cute.
Yes.
So from what I've seen, you're 100% correct on that.
Yeah. And yeah, so I'm trying to think, is there something else that you'd like to add to it? Maybe so the pricing that we have available with AllMaths, you're giving 15% off, which is fantastic. And the coupon, I'll put it in the comments as well. It's Angela. And you can get your 15% off for the digital product, right? So you can be using wherever in the world you're watching, you'll be able to access it. That's fantastic. And I think this is really something, just because I've been, teaching kids sort of in between this age group, and I've seen how long it takes for those who are really struggling with the times tables. It's going to be such an investment in kids' future, because, as I said, it is a confidence builder. Once you know your tables, because maths has got a way of making one feel stupid very quickly.
Yes.
And I think regardless of what age you're at, it can make you sweat and feel like really uncomfortable when you're faced with a problem. And I mean, we adults, and it can make us feel that way, like when you're faced with numbers. And I mean, how much more a child who hasn't got life experience and just, so those emotional barriers to learning come in, and they're basically lies, and they can come in early and so quickly, and sometimes you're wondering, why I know my child knows this, so why can't they get it, or when you phrase it in another way, then it's fine. But as soon as it's like in a certain context, then they go blank. And that is that emotional barrier to learning. And I think something when you can take make numbers fun, like the times table, make them fun and full of characters that they can remember. You're giving them tools to memorize, but also tools for future with the maths. It just takes away that angst and panic, because they know that. And I know, and I mean, I've seen, like, your 12, 13-year olds, when they know they are just grasping at straws, they just want to guess the number, so that feeling of, I'm going to get this wrong anyway because I'm just going to guess, because time is not on their side, and it is, yeah. So I think this is such a fantastic program for anyone, and especially if you've got a child, maybe they don't necessarily struggle, but maybe they are sitting with the anxiety to the subject. Like they might be a perfectionist, and they put so much pressure on themselves to be perfect, because sometimes they just come out the womb just more particular than others, and it's not anything you've done as a parent, but there's more pressure that they put on themselves, and then so when something gets wrong, they get really upset. And I think something like this can just take that pressure off. Like, I've got another way for you to remember it. How about, let's just take that pressure off. Remember the stories. You'll be able to head into those math problems without having that pressure. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's just something I've seen, especially in this phase. We in South Africa, we call it the intermediate phase, where things, and sometimes it's quite a jump because you're going from concrete to more abstract. Yeah, but now you mentioned that you were actually homeschooled. Were you homeschooled from the get-go, or maybe you can just share a bit about your homeschooling experience?
yeah.
And you were the first student of Times Tales.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm the oldest of four girls. So my mom I was the very first daughter to be homeschooled and to use Times Tales. And so my mom had not had the best experience with public school, and she just felt like she really wanted to homeschool us. That had always been a goal of hers. And so she just was very excited. And I think it's like homeschooling seems like, oh my gosh, I get to keep them home all day, it's going to be wonderful. But then the day to day, some days are good and some days are bad. And she would say, some days it's everyone get in the car, we're going to the park, forget this kind of day. So um, the cool part about Times Tales is my aunt also had four kids, and so we would all do things together. And so she was noticing that her two sons were really struggling with trying to memorize their times tables, and they're both very smart boys. And so anyway, she decided to come up with times tables. So my aunt actually created it, but my mom and her joined forces because my mom has her bachelor's in business, and so they actually created the business together, two of them, two homeschool moms with everybody, I think about
That's
10
amazing.
younger. So everyone was very young. And so or maybe even younger than that. But so she had kind of used it already with her two sons, but when they actually made it a flip book and a whole product that they sold their first on eBay, they did it with me first. And so when I
Yeah.
learned them super quickly, and I will say I was definitely not the smartest, most intelligent student. So I think they were like, well, if it works with Meagan, we know it'll work. I say I'm not giving myself enough credit, but so that
Yeah.
was pretty
Proof
awesome.
is in the
Yeah,
pudding.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, so I learned it really quickly and it was very helpful. School wise, I was always just average, I would say. My mom did not know exactly what she was going to do when it came to credibility with homeschooling or like the credits, because now there's a lot of credentials and different stuff available. But back
Mm.
then, when she started homeschooling us, there wasn't a ton of information, and there certainly was not a ton of curriculum. So I remember using kind of a hodgepodge, especially at first. Like we would use Saxon math, and then we would use like um, we used this other thing called Switched on Schoolhouse, and it was CDs. I remember we used that for like language arts and history and different things. And then I always really appreciated, my mom was very much like, if it's not working for you, let's find something that works, even if it's more money. And so I was really struggling with math because I certainly cannot learn just by reading and then answering questions. Like I just can't. And so I really struggled with feeling kind of dumb. Like I can't read this and understand. And my mom's like, let's find something that works for you. And we actually use teaching textbooks, which I don't know if you've heard of them or not, but I've talked
Yes.
to a lot of parents and they really, they love them. And I use that. And with the videos and step-by-step explanations, before that, I had no problem with math. And so that was really awesome. So that's too why I'm like with time skills, like it is so important for you to find what works for your student and not
Exactly.
and help them understand like we all learn differently. And I really appreciate that too, because every year we would take a state test to make sure we were on par with the public school or we were just kind of like in the right spot. I think it was, yeah, we had to take these tests and I would never do super well at them. And I think my mom was always just kind of like, well, so I don't know. She's just like, well, you tried your best. But the thing was too, we weren't exactly learning exactly what the public school was. And so I
Exactly.
didn't even know what to study for these tests. And so my mom didn't really know what she was going to do when it got to high school, because when it gets to high school, that's when it really starts counting. And so she actually was just praying about it and trying to, just looking for opportunities. And it popped up that there was a dual program through some type of, we were from the state of Oregon, so some type of Oregon state thing. And she was able to put me and all my sisters, we all did this. She put us in community college at 16, actually. And so I went to the community college at 16 and I basically took community college classes and it counted towards high school credit, and graduated at 19 with my bachelor's degree and my high school diploma. So it actually all worked out even better and we didn't have to pay anything. Oh, bachelor's, sorry, not bachelor's, associates. It was 2 years. So
Okay.
associate's degree and my high school diploma. And so the cool part about that was too, because I was already technically in college, I didn't have to take the SATs. So it was great because I already had a GPA for my other school to go on.
Yes.
Then
So now, would that be like a vocational college that is, I'm trying to think what would that equate to? Like what is like a community college, would you describe it? Is it different courses that are not typical school, traditional school related, or what did you do that you now, so then you qualified in like almost like a, not a trade, but in a specific vocation, and you finished your high school, or how did it work?
yeah. Well, I think too, because I forget that internationally, a lot of people don't have, I don't think, community colleges. So in the
Oh,
US,
yeah, I'm trying to
yeah.
find out what how we can equate it, because we do have from after grade 9 we do have we have trade colleges, like, and like further learning, different. It's sort of like, I think you might have core subjects that you carry on, but you do other things,
Like
more
you learn a
vocational.
trade like welding or something, or leather work
Yeah.
or
or,
nursing.
or or beauty or hair or something like that, so you getting a skill of something. Is that what you mean by like college, community colleges,
Yeah.
or what, how would you describe it then? What kind of subjects did you do?
Yeah, I so basically I think what it would be, it's not a trade school. In some ways, I actually think trade school would be even cooler just because you actually get to pick something and by the time you're done, you have something to show for it. So in
Mhm.
America, community college is basically the cheaper version of getting all those general credits done. So it's a lot of basic classes like math and
Oh,
English and psychology and that kind of thing. And so it would be equated, like I said, I think to like the first 2 years of university for everybody else in the world. So
okay.
yeah, so a lot of people will do the 2 years of community college first and then transfer to a university because it's so much cheaper. And so when I went in, I basically had to pick, and this was kind of the downside, was I had to pick a degree at 16 instead of 18 to have something
Mm.
to work towards because I could pick what kind of classes I wanted to take. There were some like math and English and stuff you obviously had to take, but then there were prerequisites. So I also got to do, I remember I did lifeguarding and first aid. I also did microbiology and a bunch of chemistry classes and anatomy and physiology classes because I, at that time, was going to try to be a dental hygienist. So I basically got all my prerequisites done by 19 to go into a dental hygiene program. So that was actually
Yes.
really awesome. So had I chosen to be a dental hygienist, that would have worked out well. But I actually, yeah, did not go that way, and I ended up becoming a teacher instead. So yeah, but it was still good to have gotten all that,
Yes.
experience and
Yes. All the
have
sciences
it.
as well.
Yeah, and then when by the
Yeah.
time I got to my 4 year university, I did have a bunch of the general classes out of the way, so that was helpful.
Mm. Yes. It's always fascinates me how the journey people take, and what they like. How do they go from A to B? But there's so many different ways of going there. I'm just thinking in my own life how it's not always just so straight.
Straightforward. And we think it,
Straightforward.
yeah.
Yes.
Well, one thing I was going to say too is so because of being homeschooled, I think my mom was a little bit nervous of how is she going to do at 16 going into community college. And I remember kind of thinking like, being a little scared because there was actually things in my homeschooling journey that I didn't know. Like my mom would kind of pick and choose and be like, she thought, I never really used geometry. Why are we doing a whole year of geometry? Let's briefly study it and move on. So I never did geometry. She also, I never really wrote papers. And so when I got to college and I had writing class and was writing, a paper a week, that was quite the learning curve. But the cool part is I think because I was homeschooled, and in a way, I would do a lot of classes on my own. My mom didn't do it in the way that she was actually teaching us. It was more so like she's helping us, aiding us. Every now and then every day we would kind of meet together and she'd do a little check-in. We'd learn vocab words, that kind of stuff. But for the most part, I was teaching myself or watching videos, that kind of thing. So when I got to college, I had the knowledge of like how to succeed and how to do well. And so with math, if I didn't know something, I was in the tutoring center. With writing, I found my best friend just so happened to be great at writing papers. And so she sat and taught me how to write a paper. So anything within homeschooling that my mom didn't cover, she had given me the tools to figure out how to do things. And to me, that's way more valuable than had she taught me all the other things, anyways. And so I think
Yeah.
having four girls, us all go into college and all graduate and all get our associate's degrees, she's like, okay. And so she tells mom, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to
Yeah.
care and try your best and give them opportunities, and the rest will be taken care of.
Yes. And I also think, I always tell the moms as well, and I have to tell myself, you can only do what you can do.
Yes.
And that's within like your day-to-day homeschooling routine. But you can also only cover what you can cover.
Yes.
And there's so much more to homeschooling and experiences and skills that you would never learn in a textbook because it's just life. And I always tell moms, don't stop your life because you're busy homeschooling. Let the children be the children in with you being their mom. And because with you living your life and your experiences and following your interests and whatever it is, they are going to be exposed to things that no one else would because you are their mom. So I'm just thinking, even like your mom and your aunt getting together and having a business, it's like it just opens your even though you might not have been you were the child at the time, there's things that are businessy that just drop in that you wouldn't get if you were if they hadn't done it. Let's put it that way.
Or like reading
So
about business. It's
sorry.
not like reading about business in a textbook is not the same as growing up in a family business and seeing how much work it is. We would have pizza parties where we'd be twisting the little Times Tales books, like they had a little spiral, it was like a spiral notebook kind of thing. And so me and
Yes.
all my cousins are twisting, watching a movie, and then they would pay us with pizza. That's how it started. So yeah,
Exactly.
exactly what you're saying.
Yes, yes, and it's invaluable because I mean we also are a family business, and my boys also help my husband as well. We sometimes go to work with him, and at one stage we needed like a certain amount of money, and my youngest, I think at the time he was like, I don't know, 5 or 6, and he said, "Why don't you just start a business?" So it's like, like if you need some money, just start a business. What's wrong with you? So that is
I have 3 ideas. You want to hear them?
Yes. And I mean, they have had their business. I think he had his business when he was 4 already. So it was like that entrepreneurial mindset and thinking, you're not going to get that if you having to just to read about it, and I want to encourage, every family, homeschooling family, no matter what you are doing, it has so much value. You don't have to try and be somebody else or do somebody else. And I think that pressure of comparison, especially, I mean, it's in life, but in homeschooling, you have to really stop yourself and say, I'm not going to go down that route. You and your children are unique. Your journey is unique. They each one studies in a unique way. You can't compare it. So I always say, if you are, yes, we do have to have certain milestones that we have to tick, or like standards. And I always say, just keep that at the back of your mind, and so that you are aware of it, but that it's not dominating what you're doing, and it's not causing you pressure, because I know as soon as I feel pressure, then I get really ratty with my kids. So, and they don't know your pressure. So very quickly they can become part of this pressurized. They can feel it even if you want to keep the pressure off them. So you have to guard your own heart about comparison. And I think it is a decision. It's like, when you don't have to decide every morning, am I going to brush my teeth or not? You make the decision once every day. Every morning I'm going to brush my teeth. So it's a decision you made once, and you don't have to do it every morning. You don't have to make that decision every morning. It's the same with comparison. I think you make it once for yourself. I'm not going to compare myself to others. And so you don't have to go through every day with this, am I going to compare or not? So that's for me something I can just really encourage homeschool parents and families with. Yeah. Really, but it was lovely chatting to you, Meagan. Thank you so much for coming and sharing about timescales and about your life. And I think it's a fantastic product. It holds so much immediate value, but also value in the future for kids that are busy learning maths. And I mean, as I said, I think it's around, I don't know how you've experienced it, but around grade, I mean, they start with tables already early, that I've seen in the mainstream schools, and that's for another topic about new maths versus old maths. But generally like too much too soon. But if your child is heading towards tables, it can be that stepping stone about, let's learn this together, regardless of what curriculum you're busy following. Or if you have got an older child that's struggling, let's just make sure that these times tables are there. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's confidence. You're paying to have, for confidence. And I think it's more than just learning the multiplication tables. It's helping them do well in math, which is just priceless to most parents. So yeah, I think that's what you said earlier. Definitely. Agree with that. So thank you. And thank you for having me and being willing to represent our product. We really appreciate it.
It's a great pleasure. It's a great pleasure. So, yes, for any of you who don't know, this is, I'm Angela from AllMaths, and we are talking about, because as we discussed, everyone learns in a different way and a different pace. And so at AllMaths, we've got different programs, and you'll be able to find the right fit for your child. So until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.